President Reagan suddenly said to me, what would you do if the United States were attacked by someone from outer space? Would you help us? I said, no doubt about it. He said, we too. I stimulated that in every way, and I believe that that's very important, particularly when leaders such as the heads of the Soviet Union and the United States at that time meet, because until the Geneva summit for 6 years there hadn't been summits between the Soviet and American leaders at a time when the situation was very tense. So my final view of President Reagan is that he was a great president. He was a person who represented the right wing of the Republican Party and who was able to go beyond many stereotypes, and despite all the criticism from some members of his own team, from some people who are present here today, he still made reciprocal steps, working with Gorbachev, working with the Soviet Union. I would like to thank George Shultz for his great contribution in making our relations a constructive, open, and mutually respectful relationship. We learned to listen to each other, and to put questions and discuss questions, and we ultimately built a situation that produced the decisions that we took.
I had the privilege of being at the Geneva meeting, and I watched it unfold. And as I think back on it, I saw the relationship between Presidents Gorbachev and Reagan evolve. It went on for 2 days. First thing that happened was a private meeting. And it was scheduled to go on, I think, for 10 minutes. It went on for about an hour and a half. And a lot of people were nervous, break it up, get on the schedule. I said, well, no, don't break it up. This is what it's for. So they came out of the meeting, well, okay, I don't know, you said how you appraised, but then we had a plenary session, and in the afternoon, during a break, all of a sudden, President Gorbachev and President Reagan took a walk. They went down to some cabin on Lake Geneva, where there was a fire and a fireplace, and you sat down there. I wasn't there, but I know when you came back, there were two friends almost talking about what was going to happen. Then we went to the next day.
From that fireside house,
yes.
President Reagan suddenly said to me, what would you do if the United States were attacked by someone from outer space? Would you help us? I said, no doubt about it. He said, we too. So that's interesting. I'm sorry for having interrupted you, but it was an interesting moment.
It was. I'm so happy you did. So, yes?
Wait a minute. So then the next morning, first day went well, then you gave a dinner for us. And there were about, I don't know, 10 or 12 people there. And it was kind of fun. And Raisa was there, Nancy Reagan was there, and so there was a little bit of feminine presence, which always helps. Then the next morning, so things seemed to be going well. The next morning, I think President Reagan, as he always did in her private meeting, put a lot of emphasis on human rights, Soviet Jewry, and so on, as I read the transcript. And you both came out, and there was a little tension. But I said to myself, One of the things that has emerged from this is that President Gorbachev, who I had met with several times before this, sees how important this subject is to President Reagan. Then we had a little explosion about strategic defense, which was always a big topic. But by the time the day was over, we had good conversation going. And then the dinner that night was a warm event. And then when you had your press conference in Geneva the next morning, you and President Reagan spoke in a constructive way, publicly. So I saw an evolution during that 2 days. And I remember our delegation went immediately from Geneva to Brussels, and President Reagan reported to our NATO ally heads of government, and there was a sense of relief. Then he came back to the United States and addressed a joint session of Congress. And there was a sense of relief that these two leaders somehow can have a conversation. And I thought it was a big, important event.
And I went from there to Prague, where the heads of the Warsaw Pact were present, and I told them about our first meeting. And there was full understanding and support, which means that by that time there was a general understanding that something needed to be done. Something needed to be done in order to relieve the tensions that could lead to a greatly dangerous conflict, that there is a need to do something against the nuclear arms race, to stop that nuclear arms race. So we were acting with due account for the signals that we were getting from the people in our countries and in other countries.